Chances are you have a pretty good idea of what's in your house. I'm sure you've gone to every room and looked in every nook and cranny, but I bet you haven't checked inside your walls. Well, after watching this video, you may want to, or maybe not. From things which opened up criminal investigations to things that made people rich, here are creepy things people found inside their walls. Just a warning before we start though, some of these things really are nightmare fuel. I'm Charlie and today we're going to look at creepy things people found inside their walls. But before we get into it, why not subscribe and press the notification bell too. Coming up first, we have Save Yourself. One day someone was doing some DIY around the house. This involved them tearing down one of their walls. Inside their wall they found some plastic tarp, and underneath that was a safe. When they opened up the safe, they found a briefcase inside of it. The briefcase had envelopes filled with money from around the world. There was also male jewelry and silver inside this briefcase. But the most mysterious thing was a bunch of VHS tapes. Under those tapes was a note with just 2 words on it: save yourself. The person who made this discovery posted it on Reddit, but they did not have a VHS player to play the tapes on. He also contacted the police to see if he could find who actually originally owned this stuff. He couldn't simply give this stuff to the previous owner of the house. That's because the house didn't have a previous owner for 20 years. But days after he informed the police of what he found, they came around and confiscated everything. They also told him to take the content down from Reddit after he'd posted what he found. They said it was because it was related to an ongoing investigation. Right now, we still don't know what was on these VHS tapes, but maybe we'll find out later. This case is still ongoing and many are waiting for the Redditor to make an update. Next up is hidden cameras. Do you ever get the feeling you're being watched? Well, unless you've swept your house for hidden cameras, maybe you are. In 2016 in Sydney, Australia, a woman had just moved into a new house. The rental home was located in the suburbs of Sydney and was pretty nice. That was until she googled the name of her landlord. She typed in the name Masaki Imaida, which is her landlord, and found a very scary post on a rental forum site. On the forum was a warning post about her landlord. A previous tenant of his had said that he's known to secretly record your movements with hidden cameras. The girl then checked her rental home and found these hidden cameras all over the place. Masaki had set up his own personal entertainment cave. He had a big leather chair and a television where he watched people shower, get dressed, and do anything else. After she made the discovery, the woman called the police, and Masaki was sentenced to 17 months behind bars. So if you're renting a home, make sure to Google your landlord's name. They may be spying on you. Next up, we have Witch's Bottle. It may sound silly, but in the 17th century, there really were witches. These were basically women who believed in potions and witchcraft, and it was fairly common practice to store a witch's bottle within the walls of one's home. This would apparently ward off bad spirits and curses. The bottles would often contain things like urine, fingernail clippings, and hair. Well, in 2004, one person found this in their home in Greenwich, London. They just paid millions for their home and then found something seriously gross. The witch's bottle dated back from the 17th century, and it was the most complete witch's bottle ever discovered. Sure enough, inside were fingernails, urine, hair, nails, brimstone, and a scrap of leather. There was also some cloth cut into the shape of a heart with a pin punctured through the middle of it. So if you live in a 17th century home or older, check your walls and you may find a witch's potion. Next up is live Korean missile. You don't have to look too far in the news to find stories about Korean missiles. Kim Jong-un is constantly firing them off near Japan and South Korea. But while remodeling a bathroom in April of 2011, one resident of Wisconsin found a 20-inch long Korean missile. The man who lived in a modest home in Francis, Wisconsin, found this 5-inch explosive head. He and his wife removed it from the inside of their wall. They then carried the missile outside and called the police. A bomb squad was then brought in and detonated it. Now, this was not one of Kim Jong-un's, instead it dated back from WW2. You see, the previous owner of their house had served in both WW2 and the Korean War, and it seems he liked to bring home lots of souvenirs. However, the previous owner had passed away, so there's no way of knowing how it made it into the bathroom wall, or how he was able to transport a live Korean missile all the way back from Korea to Wisconsin, USA. Next up, we have snakes. Did you know that the #1 animal people are afraid of is not lions or tigers, but snakes? Well, if you're one of those people who can't stand snakes, you may want to check your walls. In September of 2009, an Idaho couple moved into their dream home. But that dream soon turned into a nightmare horror movie. That's because they began hearing a hissing sound. They soon realized that their house was on top of a poisonous den of snakes, and the snakes had actually made it into their walls. Walking around their home, they could hear slithering and hissing everywhere they went. The wife of the couple, Amber Sessions, described the experience as living in Satan's lair, and they had to get expert pest removers to come in and remove the hundreds of snakes under their home. Coming up next is toxic waste. You may think that you only find toxic waste in secure plants or in a city like Chernobyl, but in February of 2017, an Ontario man found something strange inside his walls. Inside the walls of his new house, he found 400 barrels of toxic waste. The substance inside these barrels is very dangerous and causes cancer. He found the 400 barrels inside one wall of his house. After he found this, he decided to check the other walls and found an additional 400 barrels. That's right, this guy was literally sharing a house with 800 barrels of toxic waste. The previous owner of the house was named John Curry, and he once operated a tar product business. He actually had a criminal record for inappropriate waste disposal, and it seems he didn't want to risk getting arrested again, so he simply stored the toxic waste in his own home. But it's a good thing the man found this waste, otherwise it could have taken his life. Coming up next is cash. Most of these scary things people have found inside their walls on this list have not been good. But while this one is kind of scary, it's also very lucky. One day in Ohio, a man named Bob Kitts found $182,000 of Depression-era money. The only problem is Bob Kitts did not own the house where he found the money. He was a contractor working for someone else, and he did tell the owner about the money he found. The owner couldn't believe it and offered Bob a 10% finder's fee, but Bob declined and said he wanted 40%. The pair could not agree, so they actually took this to court. In court, they traced the money all the way back to the 1930s. It turned out a rich man had stored it in the walls because of the Depression. He was worried someone would steal his money, as everyone in America at the time was super poor. Remember, in 1930, this amount would have been about $2 million. But unfortunately, Bob was only allowed to keep $2,000 of the nearly $200,000 he found. The rest went to the owner of the house Bob was working on. Next up, we have Baby. This is probably the most grim discovery on this list. In 1850 in Paris, a couple had moved into a new apartment and took out one of the walls. They were then absolutely aghast when they found a mummified baby inside the wall of their apartment. The police arrived and then charged them with murder, but luckily the charges were dropped after it was found the baby had been there for years and years. This was one of the most famous forensic investigations ever at the time, and despite the cops trying to figure out who had done this to the baby, they never found out what had happened. The mummified baby is currently in a museum and is a mystery to this day. Next up is toxic black mold. You may think of mold as simply being an annoyance, but sometimes black mold can be toxic and very dangerous. In November of 2011, the Brown family moved into a new house in Greenville, South Carolina. When they were refurbishing the house and took out a wall, they found a secret corridor. The corridor was paved in stone and looked pretty cool. They hoped to find some buried treasure or money. But instead, at the end of the corridor, they found a note that said, "You found it. Hello, if you're reading this, then you found the secret room. I owned this house for a while, and it was discovered to have a serious mold problem. One that actually made me and my children very sick to the point that we had to move out." So basically, they unloaded their toxic home onto someone else. Much like the previous homeowners, the Browns then also got sick from this toxic waste and had to move. But fortunately, the Brown family were able to get their money back. And finally on the list, we have spiders. I've already mentioned that, according to polls, the scariest animal in the US is snakes. But right after that is an arachnid, spiders. Well, in October of 2014, a St. Louis couple moved into a new home. However, they soon had to move after they discovered thousands of brown recluse spiders in their walls. And they weren't just being sissies, their bites can actually be deadly. the spiders began pouring out of their ceiling and their walls. The previous homeowners did not disclose any massive spider infestations when they put the home on the market, and sadly the couple did not get their money back on this home and simply had to get the pests removed. I seriously can't think of anything more scary than spiders pouring out of my walls and ceiling. But now it's time to make your voice heard. Vote in the poll in the top right corner. Have you ever found anything scary inside your walls? If you want some more awesome videos, then check out my second channel on screen now. But as always, thanks for watching. There's some more videos you may like on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.